Hello! We have 3 stories today from Malicious Compliance. I figured we've had so much drama lately that I wanted something a little bit more fun and full of antics. I've been saving this first one for a while, but I knew the time had come for it to shine. There's no big bad boss that cost the company millions of dollars through incompetence or negligence. No, nay, there is but a man whose buttocks thirst for the familiar cushioning of his favorite chair, and he's willing to play a months-long game of hide-and-seek with his bosses to get it. Story 1. Years ago, I had a daily conference call that was always attended by the same 4 people. Myself, my boss Mike, and our counterparts from Los Angeles, Carl and Joe. One day, we're discussing some paperwork when we hear a long screeching noise. Mike asked, "What was that?" Joe said, "Sorry, I think something's coming loose in my chair. It's been making a noise all day." So I said, "That sounded like a fart, to be honest. You need to lay off the taco trucks, man." Laughter was had, and the call moved on. But every day, Joe's chair was making noises, and they were getting louder and more frequent. After a week, Carl is annoyed enough to tell Joe that he doesn't want to hear that flippin' chair anymore. Do something about it. And the squeaks disappear. Fantastic. A month passes. Then, one day, we're discussing some numbers Carl doesn't have, and he decides to walk over to Joe's office to grab a copy. Carl, a bit muffled, asks, "What is that on your head?" Joe says, "It's the headset I bought last month, so you don't have to listen to my chair make noise." Carl, still muffled, says, "Lord help me. You know that's not what I meant. I meant you need to call facilities and get it fixed or order a new one." "But I like my chair," exclaimed Joe. "Are you still gonna like your chair when you get written up by IT for plugging unapproved headsets into their telephones? Well, order a new chair, and I don't want to see you wearing that again," Carl said. The whole time the conversation was going on, Mike and I were individually muted, laughing our tails off. Carl returns to his office. Joe apparently unplugs his headset because we can all hear the chair again, and the call closes normally. The squeak continued for another week. Knowing facilities wasn't usually that slow, I asked about it. Joe replied, "Oh yeah, they delivered it 2 days ago. It's still in a box though. They didn't have time to put it together." Carl said, "Oh, thank goodness. I'm gonna call and hurry them along, but as soon as the new chair is together, I want the old one gone from the office. You get me?" "Yes, sir," said Joe. 2 days later, the squeak was back, and the very first time we heard it, Carl went off. "I told you to throw that chair away," he yelled. Joe replied, "No, you said you wanted it gone from the office. It is gone from the office. I'm working from home today." Oh my gosh. Mike and I could not mute in time, and we laughed our rears off at Carl's expense. Mike said, "He's right, you know." "Well, then use that bloody headset you bought. I can't fracking see it if you're at home, can I?" Carl replied. "Yes, sir," said Joe. In the comments, Cawbird said, "Joe's chair goes from being a pain in the rear to a pain in Carl's ear. Genius level malicious compliance." Wolfmoon said, "Ha, finding a chair you actually like is remarkably hard." Swiggy tells his story. "Tell me about it. I work for a company and they decided to throw away the old office chair in the maintenance shop. Still looked like it had some mileage on it. So I said I'd take it. When I grew up, you didn't throw anything away. Got it home and set it up at the end of the table where I sat. I liked it. Comfy and even had armrests. True, they needed to be recovered, but that could be done later. Enter the missus. She sees that piece of junk chair and goes from 0 to raging in 2 seconds. And she was about 4 months pregnant. I wasn't going to argue. I said I wasn't going to throw it out, but I'd store it in the pantry until I got a desk. It sat in the pantry for a couple months. But I came home one day and my kitchen chair gave up the ghost. It was one of those folding chairs every commercial entity has, but it wasn't made for everyday use. I sat on it, the supports weren't lined up, and down I went with the chair. That one ended up in the dumpster. I trundle out that god-awful, ugly old green office chair and said I'd use it until we could get a new chair. Mrs. wasn't happy, but she saw my point. A week or so later, she wakes me up to go to work. Has a sheepish look on her face. She then tells me I'm going to need to get a new chair. "You didn't throw that heavy thing away, did you?" I said, feeling the anger start in. "Oh no, it's still in the kitchen. I'm stealing it for myself." As I mentioned, she was very pregnant by this time. Her back was hurting and she had a friend over. She let friend use her chair and she used my chair. Now she understood. That junky old office chair was amazingly comfortable. It supported her back perfectly. It worked out. I usually was a night owl, so used my chair while she slept. At dinner time, I used hers. Then, when she watched TV, I was usually in the kitchen in my chair reading. If it were a baby, it would be described as having a face only a mother could love. 5 years, and another pregnancy in between it finally gave up. She was sitting in it, leaned back, and the back broke off. No way to repair it. To this day, though, I've used an office chair at the table. Ooh, what a cute story. I love that the missus stole the chair when she realized how comfy it was. I would totally do that. For some reason, this reminds me of Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory and his seat selection process at Penny's apartment. Finding the right seat is like finding a well-fitted pair of jeans. It can be a challenging task. But I've gone way off topic. Our second story continues to poke fun at managers who take themselves way too serious. Our next story features one such manager who's such a stickler for the rules that you'd think she sees herself as the self-proclaimed defender of some sacred commandments. But when one of her commandments is a bit wishy-washy with the language, one young employee decides, this time, he's going to win. Story 2. Years ago, I was a cook at a well-known fast casual restaurant known for their large burritos and charging extra for guac. I worked hard because the place was very understaffed given the number of customers that came in. Management was understanding when we had to cut corners to make sure people did not wait for food. One of the rules we had to follow before cooking the rice was to rinse the raw rice 3 times until the water runs clear. Vague? I know. How clear is clear? What if after 3 rinses the water is not clear? 3 times and runs clear, or 3 times or runs clear? Who knows? I did not ask. Most of the time, we would give the rice 1 or 2 rinses before throwing it into the cooker. Never had any problems with customers complaining about it, and we never ran out of rice. Since there were never any problems, management did not care. Everyone was happy. That is, until one day, Miss Manager decides it is time to enforce every single rule exactly. Not sure why. To get to the position she was in, she knew how to do all the individual tasks in the kitchen, so she knew the rules. However, she did not know how to conduct the symphony of the dozens of simultaneous tasks at the speed and accuracy required to keep customers moving and to never burn anything. I did. She did not know which corners were okay to cut and which ones were not. I did. As I was getting ready for the busy shift, but the kitchen was not in busy mode yet, I am rinsing rice and Miss Manager approaches me. Make sure to rinse the rice until the water runs clear. I look at her and respond, I always do. She knew I was lying, but she knew why. She knew that it would take longer to make the rice. But I was the only one who could make sure that rice never runs out. Her life would be a nightmare if we ran out of rice. She had a chance to let it go. She did not, though. Mr. Cook, I know you don't follow that rule. Keep rinsing the rice until the water runs clear, and before you put this rice on the cooker, come find me and show me that it runs clear. I looked at her with a straight face and replied, keep rinsing the rice until the water runs clear? Got it. I begin. Fill the pot of rice with water, agitate the rice, pull out the perforated part of the pot, and dump out all of the cloudy water. After 3 times, the water still resembles water skim milk. I look up. She is watching me. She asks, does that water look clear to you? It was rhetorical. I see how it is. I start rinsing again. Satisfied, she walks away. I continue repeating the process. A while goes by, and yes, I am counting the number of times. The long grains of rice are breaking apart, and the entire pot is turning into a strange, mushy mixture of white rice. Given the time I am taking on this dumb task, everything else that needs to get started in the kitchen is falling behind. Finally, Miss Manager appears in the kitchen again. You're still rinsing the rice? The timing was perfect. I dump out the water in front of her and ask, does that water look clear to you? As I dump out the precursor to slightly watered down horchata, she softly says, no. I step away from the sink. How many times do you think I've rinsed this rice? I ask. 7, she answers. No, try 37. I wasn't joking. I have rinsed this rice 37 times and the water is not running clear to your satisfaction. Should I continue? She looks at the rice, knows it's unusable, and that she has lost the fight. On one hand, she cannot tell me to keep going because the ground up rice was only a few rinses and a cook away from becoming grits. On the other hand, she cannot tell me to stop rinsing because then she would be in violation of the sacred rice rinsing commandment. Additionally, she cannot fire me. Otherwise, the store could not open. She scheduled me to work the entire day, and she sure knows that she could not do what I do in the kitchen. Fine, she relents. Get back in there and make sure we're ready when it's time to open. I laughed to myself as I went back to work. I win. In the comments, Lord Dino Viking said, Uncle Roger has entered the chat. Yes, Uncle Roger. Emerson Lucero replied, Hiya. This is obviously a reference to one of my fave comedy cooking YouTube channels by a UK comedian, Nigel Ng. Very funny and very much recommended. OK Negotiation said, this sounds like the rice is maybe instant or minute rice. Essentially, the rice has already been cooked once and then goes through some dehydration process. When you go to cook it, it's essentially impossible to rinse clean without it breaking up like this. But it cooks a little bit faster than regular rice. WannaCry replied, Source: work at Chipotle. It is an instant rice. It takes 20 to 30 to cook it. What is being washed away is starch. And yes, washing more than twice is nonsense. It's a well-known fact that wash it until it is clear is impossible. Tonal Parsnips added, that's why the advice is usually mostly clear. OP replied, no, keep rinsing. Tonal Parsnips retorted, you're not my supervisor. This supervisor would drive me nuts. Nobody likes it when their boss is hovering or looking over their shoulder and making them feel incompetent, especially when they know very well that they are the more competent of the two. Useless factoid, Cece hates rinsing rice before cooking it. It is so annoying. I'm not even sure why I find it so irritating, I just do. Sorry, what was that? No, I'm not lazy. Getting it to run clear is just such a nuisance. Why? Why does it never run clear? Perhaps the reason the water is never clear has something to do with this proverb from renowned thinker Dimitri Martin. What's this about rice milk? I didn't even know rice had nipples. Our third story is a bit tamer than the first two, but gave me a chuckle because it's so absurd, and I've met people like this while volunteering. So hopefully it's as relatable to you as it was to me. One volunteer finds out they have a very particular set of skills. And no, while it's not exactly hunting people across Europe, it does come in handy at your local plant nursery until one manager decides to put an end to this perfect union between man and stacks of unassembled boxes. Story 3. In the 1990s, I was a college student studying botany. A local botanical garden sponsored a plant sale every year. This brought in dozens of vendors of rare and native plants and probably upwards of 1,000 plant fanatics. People would drop thousands of dollars on plants at this sale. The Botanic Garden had a volunteer policy that was basically work for 2 hours helping at the sale and you get in a half hour before the general public. I seldom bought anything, but I knew and chatted with several of the vendors. And it was nice to peruse without the insane crush of people. The mostly elderly volunteers did various tasks like man the cash registers and information booth, while younger ones like me would set up tables or help people carry out their purchases. One year, I discovered that I was really fast at assembling boxes. The Botanic Garden had boxes printed just for the sale. They were basically cardboard flats for carrying plants. At some point, I started coming 2 hours early just to put together boxes. I would do 20 while others were struggling to make one. By the end of 2 hours, I would have a huge stack of boxes that would last through most of the sale. The last year I volunteered, there was a new person in charge of the volunteers. When I showed up and started putting together boxes, she came up to me and said, "What are you doing?" "I'm putting together boxes." "You're not on the list." "There's a list?" "I'm just a volunteer." "Volunteers are required to work 8 hours in the garden every year, and I've never seen you before." This was news to me, having been doing the same thing for several years with no issues. Seems suspicious considering most of the volunteers were in their 70s or 80s. I had encountered this type of person before, so I knew better than to try to debate policy. "Well, okay," I said, dropping the box I was putting together and walking to the back of the line of people waiting to get in. I had only been there long enough to put about a dozen boxes together. The stacks of unassembled boxes sat there and no one came to put them together. After the tiny stack of boxes was gone, people had to put together their own boxes and they were angry. The line went really slow as every person had to stop and make their own box. A minor inconvenience multiplied by 1,000 people becomes a real problem. I'm just sorry that the public had to bear the brunt of it. In the comments, Max said, "One would think that a gardener would know that they'll reap what they sow." Slightly evolved quoting, "I've never seen you before," said, "And I've been doing this for years and never seen you before either. I'd like to keep it that way." Evil Zippo said, "Yeah, lots of volunteer organizations attract these people who just have to be in charge and they feel like they need to enforce rules just to flex their power." Night Otter replied, "The worst office politics I ever encountered was while volunteering." Marfad added, "The politics are more cutthroat as the stakes are so low." It sounds like OP was promoted to shopper, though he unfortunately has to wait alongside everyone else. I always find the minimum requirements for volunteering to be so interesting. I kind of get it. I mean, places that are heavy on volunteers need to spread the love out, support throughout the year, not have it for just one big shindig. But putting people like this in charge of volunteers is like powdery mildew on your lilacs. It's a real pain. Trust me, I'm dealing with it. And that's it for today. Until next time, shine bright, Starlight. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.